It's almost impossible to scroll through anything these days without hearing about antioxidants.
Oh, absolutely. They're everywhere.
Yeah, in beauty creams promising eternal youth, supplements lining the shelves, and like every other food seems to be marketed for its antioxidant power.
Right.
The message, and honestly, it's one I've probably echoed before when I knew less, is that antioxidants are these little superheroes fighting off aging, helping us stay younger longer.
That's the common wisdom, yeah.
So for this deep dive, we're going to explore maybe a different angle, the potential downsides of, going overboard with antioxidants, really try and refine our understanding.
That's a great goal
Mhm.
because we all have this kind of ingrained idea that antioxidants are just good, that more is always better.
Exactly.
But what we've found digging into the research, well, it paints a much more intricate picture. Let's maybe start with what antioxidants actually do.
Okay, yeah. So at their core, what are these things that get so much hype?
Simply put, antioxidants neutralize molecules called free radicals. Now, while things like pollution can increase them, our bodies actually create free radicals naturally, all the time. It's just a byproduct of living.
Right, like the exhaust fumes from an engine, just a natural consequence of our cells doing their jobs, making energy.
Exactly. Every time we generate energy by breaking down carbohydrates, fats, other fuels, free radicals are produced. These are often reactive oxygen species, highly reactive molecules.
And it can damage stuff, DNA, proteins.
Yes, precisely. They can damage DNA, proteins, cell membranes, just general cellular components.
And for ages, the dominant idea was that this ongoing damage from free radicals, that was the main engine driving aging itself. So the logic seemed pretty straightforward. Load up on antioxidants to neutralize them, and you slow down aging, maybe even reverse it.
It was a very compelling theory, logical even.
Yeah.
And it spurred a ton of investigation.
I sense a but coming.
But the evidence we've gathered, particularly looking at dietary antioxidants and supplements, it indicates they generally don't extend human lifespan, not in a direct way.
Really?
We're just not seeing that clear causal link in humans.
Okay, so all those berries, the green tea, the antioxidant pills, they might not be making us live longer because they're antioxidants? Is that what you're saying?
That's the crucial distinction. The few substances that have shown some promise in extending lifespan in various studies, they often seem to work through different pathways.
Like what?
Well, things unrelated or less related to just scavenging free radicals. Think about, say, anti-inflammatory effects or changes in how our genes are expressed, epigenetic modifications, or how they impact our mitochondria, the cell's power plant.
Okay, that makes sense. It's not just about mopping up the radicals. So what other challenges do these antioxidant supplements face in actually, doing us good?
Well, one major issue is simply getting them to where they need to be in the right amounts. Bioavailability. Many antioxidant supplements, even if they look potent in a test tube, they struggle to reach the specific areas within our cells where the damage might be happening, or not in high enough concentrations to make a real difference.
So they might not get absorbed well or transported properly or even get inside the cells effectively?
Exactly. All of those can be bottlenecks.
And it's not just about getting them in, is it? I mean, our bodies are incredibly complex. What works in a lab dish doesn't always translate.
Precisely. And we also have some pretty fascinating evidence from genetic studies in animals.
Oh, like what?
Well, studies where animals were genetically engineered to produce significantly higher levels of their own internal antioxidants. Not from supplements, but part of their natural biology.
Okay, so they should live longer, right, based on the old theory.
You'd think so. But surprisingly, these animals often didn't live any longer than the regular ones.
Wow. So even when the body itself is churning out more antioxidants, it doesn't necessarily mean a longer life. That really throws a wrench in the simple antioxidants equal longevity idea.
It certainly complicates it.
Okay, building on that simply having more antioxidants doesn't guarantee longevity. Let's get into something even more surprising you mentioned earlier.
Right, the counterintuitive finding. Some research has actually indicated that under certain conditions, increasing free radicals can extend lifespan in animals.
Wait, what? Increasing the things we thought were bad?
It sounds completely backwards, I
You're
know.
telling me the very things we're trying to neutralize might actually help.
In the right amounts, yes. It seems the oxidation reactions triggered by free radicals can act as important signals. They can activate beneficial survival pathways within our cells.
So it's like a little bit of stress can actually make the system stronger, more resilient.
Exactly that. It's a concept called hormesis. And if we constantly bombard our system with excessive antioxidants, we might actually be interfering with these crucial adaptive processes. We might be preventing the cell from learning to protect itself.
So our cells need a little bit of that damage signal to trigger their defenses. It kind of reminds me of exercise, how muscles need to be stressed to grow stronger.
That's a perfect analogy. Think about exercise cardio or lifting weights.
Yeah.
Both lead to an increased production of free radicals because we're burning more energy.
Right. You feel the burn.
And the harder we work out, the more free radicals are generated. But these very free radicals act as key signals. They kickstart the mechanisms leading to muscle growth, improve cardiovascular fitness, better endurance.
So we need that stress signal to adapt and improve. What about things like blood flow restriction training? I've heard that creates a lot of metabolic stress too.
Absolutely. BFR training, where you use bands to partially restrict blood flow during exercise,
Right.
it causes a buildup of metabolic byproducts, and that includes free radicals.
Okay.
And studies suggest this buildup actually contributes significantly to muscle growth. It can even help prevent muscle loss when we're inactive, like during injury recovery.
How does it work?
Well, the increased free radical production essentially tricks the body. It thinks it's done a much more intense workout than it actually has, signaling the need to build or maintain muscle mass.
That's fascinating how these seemingly negative byproducts can actually trigger positive effects down the line.
It really is.
This also makes me think, why are we constantly told to eat fruits and vegetables? Is it only because of the antioxidants? Because that sounds like an oversimplification now.
It absolutely is an oversimplification. While fruits, vegetables, things like green tea, they do contain antioxidants, yes. But their health benefits are likely far more complex and wide-ranging.
Right.
We often make the mistake of attributing all their benefits solely to antioxidants. But these foods are packed with a huge array of other beneficial compounds, vitamins, minerals, fiber, various phytonutrients.
Stuff that does all sorts of other things in the body.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They have anti-inflammatory effects, they feed our gut microbes, they influence gene expression. It's not just the antioxidant content making that salad good for you.
Not at all. And does this tie back to that hormesis idea again?
It does. Some of the compounds in these plants, sometimes called antinutrients in other contexts, might actually exert mild stress on our cells.
Like a tiny, tiny dose of something slightly challenging.
Precisely. And these small amounts can trigger protective and repair processes. It's like a cellular, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger effect. The mild stress makes our cells more resilient over time.
Okay, that's a really important distinction. So a balanced diet rich in these whole foods is crucial for overall health, for longevity, but it's not just the antioxidants doing the work.
Definitely not. And it's vital to understand that let's say, the optimal diet for maximizing muscle growth might look different from a diet primarily aimed at long-term health and preventing chronic disease.
Right, different goals, potentially different approaches.
And the longevity-promoting effects of diet often involve things like influencing our epigenome, how our genes are read, and reducing chronic low-grade inflammation. These are much more complicated mechanisms than just neutralizing free radicals.
Okay, so we've established that maybe excessive antioxidants aren't the magic bullet we thought. Now, let's dig into some specific reasons why going overboard could actually be, well, detrimental. You mentioned they could even be harmful in excess. Let's maybe walk through those 4 key reasons you highlighted earlier.
Sure. The first key reason is this interference with hormetic signaling, which we just touched on.
Right, the beneficial stress response.
Exactly. A moderate amount of oxidative stress acts as that signal. Turning on protective responses, that's hormesis. But if we flood the system with too many external antioxidants, we can actually blunt these beneficial signals.
So we stop the message getting through.
Kind of. We reduce the cell's ability to adapt and respond effectively to metabolic challenges it might face later. We're essentially weakening our cell's natural defenses by trying to overprotect them.
Okay, that makes sense. What's the second reason too many antioxidants could be a problem?
The second point, and this one's quite sobering, is that some studies have actually suggested that excessive antioxidant consumption might negatively affect mortality rates.
Negatively affect.
Meaning, taking too many antioxidants, particularly certain ones in high doses, could potentially shorten your lifespan.
Wow. The exact opposite of what people are trying to achieve.
Precisely. It's definitely something to consider.
Okay, that's a big one. What's the third reason?
The third reason ties into the delicate balance within our cells. It's the balance between oxidation and antioxidation, often called a redox balance.
Redox, okay.
Our cells have very precise mechanisms to maintain this equilibrium. It's crucial for normal function. Taking in too many external antioxidants can throw this balance off.
And what happens then?
It can interfere with important cellular processes. A critical example is programmed cell death, or apoptosis. This is how our bodies get rid of old, damaged, or potentially cancerous cells.
We need that process, right, to clear out the junk.
Absolutely essential. But if the redox balance is disrupted by too many antioxidants, this cleanup process can be hindered. You can end up with an accumulation of these senescent or zombie cells.
The zombie cells, I've read about those. They hang around causing inflammation.
Exactly. They contribute to inflammation and the aging process. So, ironically, too many antioxidants might prevent the cleanup of cells that contribute to aging. You need some level of oxidation for apoptosis to work properly.
Okay, that's counterintuitive again. And the final reason.
The final point is really about distinguishing between the antioxidants our bodies make naturally, or the ones we get as part of a complex food matrix, versus those we take as isolated supplements.
Ah, so where they come from matters.
It seems to. The majority of the negative data we see, the potential harms, the lack of benefit, tends to relate to high-dose supplementation with specific isolated antioxidants.
Like taking a big pill of just vitamin E.
For example, yes. Whereas the benefits we often associate with antioxidant intake are generally linked to consuming a diet rich in vegetables, low glycemic fruits like berries, whole foods.
The whole package deal.
Right. The complex mix of compounds in those foods. The fiber, the minerals, the thousands of phytochemicals likely work together synergistically. It's probably not just one isolated antioxidant doing all the heavy lifting.
That makes a lot of sense. It's the synergy of the whole food, not just extracting one component.
Exactly.
Now, you touched on this earlier, but let's really hammer this home.
Yeah.
The idea that antioxidants alone are the key to stopping aging is just a massive oversimplification, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
If only it were that simple. The reality is, aging is vastly more complex. We currently recognize at least 12 distinct hallmarks or mechanisms of aging.
12.
At least 12. And we're likely to discover more as our understanding grows. It's far beyond just free radical damage.
Okay, 12. That's a lot more complex than just popping an antioxidant pill. Can you, list a few of these other key mechanisms just to give us a sense?
So just to name a few, we have things like disruptions in how cells communicate with each other. Then there's genomic instability that's basically accumulating damage to our DNA over time. Telomere attrition, the shortening of the protective caps at the ends of our chromosomes. Epigenetic alterations, changes in how our genes are read and used, like highlighting or ignoring certain instructions in the same manual.
Right, the software controlling the hardware, those sound pretty fundamental. What else is on the list?
We also have loss of proteostasis. That's the cell's ability to maintain a healthy balance of proteins, making sure they're folded correctly and getting rid of damaged ones. Mitochondrial dysfunction problems with those cellular power plants.
Energy production declining.
Yes. A decline in autophagy, that cellular cleanup and recycling process we mentioned. Stem cell exhaustion, our body's pool of repair cells getting depleted.
Okay, keep going.
Cellular senescence, the accumulation of those zombie cells. Imbalances in our gut microbiome, the community of microbes living in our gut. And finally, altered nutrient sensing.
Altered nutrient sensing. What's that?
That refers to how our cells sense and respond to the availability of nutrients. For instance, pathways like mTOR can become overactive, often due to excessive calorie intake or too much animal protein.
And mTOR is like a growth switch.
Kind of a central controller for growth and metabolism. Keeping it constantly on seems to accelerate aging processes in many studies. So nutrient sensing is a big one.
Wow. Okay, it's almost overwhelming thinking about all those interconnected processes. It definitely puts the simple idea of antioxidants as the sole solution into a much, much broader perspective.
It really does. And when you consider all this complexity, it becomes perhaps less surprising that these large-scale studies on antioxidant and multivitamin supplementation haven't really shown the hoped-for benefits. Not for extending lifespan anyway.
You mean those big meta-analyses, the ones that pool data from loads of different studies?
Exactly. Several major meta-analyses looking at hundreds of thousands of people combined have pretty consistently shown that taking multivitamins or various antioxidant supplements doesn't increase lifespan or reduce overall mortality.
No benefit on living longer or dying less?
Generally, no significant benefit shown across large populations. In fact, one notable meta-analysis actually linked high doses of specific antioxidants, like vitamin E and vitamin A, to a slightly increased risk of death.
Increased risk. You mentioned vitamin E and prostate cancer risk earlier.
Yes, that's one example that came out of some research. High-dose vitamin E supplementation was linked to a higher risk in some studies. Now, to be fair,
Yes.
there are always potential criticisms of these large studies. Maybe the dosage wasn't right, or the timing, or the specific chemical form of the antioxidant used. These are valid points for researchers to consider.
Sure, the science is always evolving.
But the overall picture, looking at the bulk of the evidence in both humans and animals, just doesn't support widespread antioxidant supplementation as a major life extension strategy. The signal for benefit just isn't strong, and there are hints of potential harm.
That's a really fair summary. A consistent lack of significant benefit is pretty telling. And it's not just a lack of benefit. You mentioned situations where it could actually be harmful, like in the context of cancer. I think I remember reading something about that.
Yes, that's a really important area of concern. Some studies suggest that antioxidant supplementation might be risky for certain individuals, potentially even promoting tumor formation or metastasis, the spread of cancer.
How? Why would that happen?
Well, the thinking goes like this. Cancer cells often have a very high metabolic rate. They grow fast, they divide fast. And this generates a lot of free radicals inside the cancer cell itself.
Okay.
This high level of internal oxidative stress can actually be a vulnerability for the cancer cell. It can damage the cancer cell and make it more susceptible to dying or being killed by treatments.
Right, so the free radicals are almost like a weapon against the cancer cell in that context.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
Or at least a contributing factor to its potential demise. So if someone takes high doses of antioxidants,
They might be neutralizing that weapon, protecting the cancer cell.
that's the concern. That the antioxidants could inadvertently help the cancer cells survive and thrive by reducing their oxidative stress, protecting the bad guys along with the good guys.
Wow. Okay.
This is why antioxidant supplementation is often specifically not recommended for many cancer patients, especially during active treatment. Though there are some specific exceptions being studied, like very high-dose intravenous vitamin C in particular contexts, but that's very different from popping pills.
That's such a critical piece of information, and it seems this potential for kind of negative interference extends to other areas too, like how our bodies recover and adapt to exercise.
That's right. It links back to our earlier discussion.
Yeah.
Just as we talked about the beneficial role of free radicals generated during exercise in triggering positive adaptations.
Right, the hormesis effect again.
Taking antioxidant supplements, especially around workout times, can actually lessen those positive effects.
How so?
The minor muscle damage and the inflammation caused by a good workout, including the free radicals produced, act as those crucial signals. They tell the body, okay, we need to repair and get stronger, fitter.
So they prompt muscle growth, better cardiovascular function.
Exactly. But if you dampen that initial stress signal too much with a flood of antioxidants, you might actually hinder those beneficial long-term adaptations. You blunt the message.
So less muscle gain, maybe less improvement in fitness from the same workout.
Potentially, yes. It's a similar idea to why some other aggressive recovery methods, like plunging into ice-cold water immediately after strength training, might also interfere with muscle growth signals. Sometimes, letting the body's natural response play out is better for adaptation.
So the body's natural response to stress, whether it's exercise stress or a moderate amount of oxidative stress from normal metabolism, is often a key driver of positive change and resilience.
Exactly. And trying to completely eliminate that stress with excessive antioxidants can actually backfire. It might feel like you're protecting yourself, but you could be hindering adaptation.
Okay, so if we try and distill all of this down, the big takeaways seem to be relying solely on antioxidant supplements for anti-aging is probably misguided. A little bit of cellular stress, like from exercise or even just metabolism, is actually a good thing. It triggers beneficial responses. And the whole aging process is way, way more complex than just battling free radicals. Does that kind of sum it up?
Absolutely. That's a concise and, I think, accurate summary of the key insights from the research we've looked at.
So what's the practical takeaway then for us, for the listeners? We hear so much about antioxidants being good, but it sounds like, well, moderation and context are everything.
That's exactly it. The practical takeaway is that getting a moderate amount of antioxidants through a varied and healthy diet, lots of different colored vegetables, some low glycemic fruits like berries, whole grains, nuts, seeds, that's generally sufficient and likely beneficial because you're getting that whole package of nutrients working together.
Right, the synergy effect.
Yes. But excessive supplementation with isolated antioxidants, especially things like high-dose vitamin A or E, might not provide the hoped-for benefits for longevity. and could even be harmful in some cases.
So less focus on pills, more on the plate.
Generally, yes. It's probably a better approach to focus on a comprehensive strategy for health and longevity, one that addresses the many different mechanisms of aging we talked about.
So things like focusing on that nutrient-dense diet, getting regular exercise, making sure you get enough sleep, managing stress, those probably have a much bigger impact on long-term health than just swallowing handfuls of antioxidant pills.
I would say that's a very accurate way to put it. It's about supporting the body's incredible, complex natural processes and tackling the known underlying factors of aging in a more holistic way.
This has really opened my eyes. We started with this seemingly simple idea, antioxidants are good, fight aging. And we've uncovered this much more complex, nuanced picture where too much might actually be counterproductive.
It often turns out that way in biology, doesn't it? Balance is key.
It really does. So, considering this intricate nature of aging and the potential downsides of oversupplementation, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other aspects of our lifestyle might be far more impactful for our long-term health and vitality? Things we might be overlooking in this constant focus on finding the next magic bullet supplement.
That's a fantastic question to leave people thinking about. And, looking forward, as our understanding of nutrition and individual needs keeps advancing, it's actually pretty exciting to think about how new technologies might help.
Like what?
Well, things like artificial intelligence. Imagine, maybe soon, being able to just take a photo of your meal and have AI give you a detailed breakdown of its calorie and macronutrient content, maybe even estimate micronutrients.
Wow, personalized nutrition feedback instantly.
Yeah, exactly. Helping you identify potential gaps or imbalances in your actual diet. That kind of personalized, actionable insight could ultimately be far more valuable for long-term health than just blindly taking a generic supplement based on hype.
That's a fascinating glimpse into what the future might hold. It really seems like our understanding of health, nutrition, longevity, it's constantly evolving. And it's just so important to stay informed and maybe think critically about the headlines and the marketing claims we see everywhere.
Couldn't agree more. Critical thinking and looking at the bigger picture are essential.
Well, thanks for taking this deep dive with me. Really appreciate sharing all that insight.
My pleasure. It was a great discussion.